day. Thank you for Yeshua, our Messiah. Thank you for this cycle of freedom, revelation, and redemption. Thank you because you are a healer. You heal us. You heal our bodies, our minds, and hearts. Hashem Yeshua. Amen. So we are getting into this celebration of this cycle of freedom, revelation, and redemption. Just amazing how the Lord works in a way that we cannot forget what He did for all of us. We as human beings, we tend to forget everything, especially males. We forget everything, right? We need a female to take care of us all the time, beginning from our mothers, our wives, our daughters. It's just amazing. So this festival cycle, like I'm going to get some stuff from different resources, but especially from Michael Strassfeld's book, The Jewish Holidays. Is really amazing. In his introduction, he says, the Jewish people, perhaps because we have done so much traveling in space, have developed a map for traveling in time called the festival cycle. This map has its origin in the Torah and has continued to develop and change even in our era. The festivals operate on several levels at one and the same time, and hence can serve as a guide for travelers moving through the several dimensions of existence. One can also say that the festivals act as lodgings for travelers making their way through the year. These festivals' inns are special accommodations not solely for rest or retreat from the world, but also places to halt and take our bearings, to make sure we are traveling and not just going around in circles. These are inns not for sleeping, but rather for awakening from obviousness. The cycle comes to remind us of both eternal nature and its order, and the ever-recurring history of an eternal people. Even more fundamentally, the festival cycle causes us to focus on how our human life cycle parallels that of the natural and historical cycles of this world. So it's just amazing how the Lord left this cycle for us to remember what He did for all of us. It's just, He kind of allows us to discover this time and space. In other words, we, in the cycle, in this cycle of holidays, we bring the past to our present, hoping for the Messianic era and the world to come. I mean, you see Messiah all over the place in this cycle. Anytime you open the book, it's just, wow, Messiah is right there. And the Jewish people, as you all know, are more Messianic than anybody else. So it's just amazing the way this works, but at the same time, during this cycle, it saddens me the way we as Messianic people, as Messianic Jew and Gentile, we have a conflict, a debate for every little petty thing we can find in this period of time. We try to understand exactly when Yeshua died. We already passed the time when exactly Yeshua was born. When was his birth? Exactly. We need to know the exact time when that's happening. We tend to... It is important, yes. I found at least 5 different versions about the period of his death and all of that, the scheduling or whatever we call it, the way, the days and the time and everything, which is in the Bible. I mean, you just read Luke, the book of Luke is my favorite version of the gospel. And so, are we going to find the exact time and the exact space? Maybe not. I mean, even archaeologically, the exact space is still in debate. And so, and why we can't find the tomb? Because he's not there. I mean, he's not there. So why are you looking for somebody who's not there? You know, he's up in heaven, you know. So it's just, again, saddens me. I used to do the same thing, like, not you are doing, I know you're not doing it, not in this congregation, right? Never happened in this congregation. No one is looking for those little petty things, right? We don't care about it. And so I'm going to review things that we already did in the past. The Shalosh Regalim, the pilgrimage festivals, are the three main important ones. Pesach, Shavuot, and Sukkot. Those are the major Moedim. And we know that from Shavuot to Sukkot, we have other holidays to review, but we're not going to do it today. We are going to check the three of them, but we're going to be focused more on Pesach, because we're about to celebrate Pesach, or Passover, La Pascua in Espanol. And so it's very important for us to understand these periods of time. I have another great commentary right here from Arnold Hazen. He says, and thus we establish in these, the firstborn of Jewish festivals, the special character of Jewish memory. We are commanded to recall the past in order to remember the present, to see it clearly, to know it fully, and all its possibilities in the light of our future redemption. We just stand between redemptions, as it were, looking back in order to look forward. We thus come to see that we also stand among redemptions, acts of freedom, birth of possibility, that we might not have seen or assisted in without the paradigm of Pesach. Messianic hope will not be credible in the world as we know it, were it not for the fact rehearsed at Pesach that redemption has occurred. Because it has. Because the events of liberation that we recall are as real as acts of cruelty or arbitrariness of which we need no reminder. We are made bold enough to hope for the Messiah, and the reservoir of faith, the gift of memory, makes all the difference as we go about the business of living in the world and trying to redeem it. So, see, we can see the Messiah right here, the Messianic hope is right here, the hope of redemption. And this is the firstborn of all the holidays. It's just amazing the way we need to look at these holidays. Messianic hope will not be credible in the world as we know it, were it not for the fact rehearsed Pesach. I mean, we're rehearsing. When we do all these holidays, we need to understand that we are rehearsing. This is not for real yet. We are rehearsing for the world to come. We are rehearsing. So, don't really spend too much time in the little details of how everything has to be done. It's important, yes, especially for ladies, right? It's very important, those little details, they gotta be perfect. But don't get caught on that. I mean, it's a thing. It's a thing that we, and some guys do the same thing. I'm not really detailed. I'm not, I know some guys who do that. Just a few, But, most of us are just following orders, right? Where everything needs to go and this and that. We're not really into details. I'm not. But anyways, if you got caught out in those little details, you might forget the real meaning of the whole holiday. You might forget the pureness, the essence, the fundamentals of the holidays, which again goes to our hearts, to the Messiah's heart. And if we pretend to have Messiah's Holy Spirit in our heart, so we need to be like him. And of course, he was preparing, when he prepared the Pesach, he sent his 2 disciples. He wasn't so worried about the details, right? He sent 2 disciples, Peter and John, I believe. And they were doing the whole thing. I mean, the whole Pesach story, what they did was just, prepare everything. And so we need to prepare, but don't get caught out too much in those little details. Let's move on to Pesach. So, what to celebrate on Pesach? Let me just go back again to okay, we are here. The Shalosh Regalim I was telling you about, the pilgrimage festivals, Pesach, Shavuot, and Sukkot. So Pesach is about the freedom. We got free from our sin. We got free from Egypt, from our sin, from our own things that we do. Then the Lord revealed himself to us 40 days later. So don't take just Pesach as 1 or 2 nights or nice dinner and eating and all of that, the spring cleaning and so on. Think about a 40 plus period of holiday, a 40 days period of the whole thing. Remember, between Pesach and Shavuot, we got two more holidays, I believe. The eating of the matzah for 7 days, the first fruits too, and counting the Omer. We are counting the Omer, which is very important because when Yeshua was on earth and he resurrected, remember he was 40 days with his disciples. During that period of 40 days that we are counting the Omer. So it is important to recognize that and elevate your prayers of thanksgiving to the Lord for the sacrifice of his only begotten Son, who was sent to us to die for our sins. Another mystery, of course, another situation. We are starting with Zav, the portion of the Torah this week, and it talks about the sacrifices. And that's another thing. We start to compare Yeshua with those sacrifices. We need to understand that Yeshua is none of those sacrifices. It's just metaphorically, the commentarists and the rabbis and even the Christendom compare the sacrifice of Yeshua with the Levitical sacrifices. But Yeshua is none of them. Yeshua is beyond, he's more than that. He's not an animal. He's not, the other cereal and other sacrifices. He is not none of that. He's, better than all of those. And so our minds need to transcend, to be beyond our understanding and look at him more than just or just a human sacrifice, He's more than that. So in this period of time between Pesach and Shavuot, we need to understand that we need to get ready to receive the Torah again at Shavuot. And it's just amazing because in Shavuot, God basically comes down in tabernacle with his people, which is Sukkot at the same time. So that's why it's very important for the Lord to make sure that his people will be doing this pilgrimage festivals in this period of time. He needed them to understand what's going on. He needed them to write down what's going on so we can understand it as well. And we also need to understand that, one of the other, not mysteries, but the things that we discovered in the Bible is that Yeshua was preaching most of the time during these periods, during this cycle of, again, redemption and then freedom and so on. He was preaching most of the time. When you read the gospel versions, you realize that he was at Pesach, at Shavuot, in all this, in Sukkot, in all these periods of time, he was preaching. Why he was stressing, why the writers stress more those preachings on those periods of time of the cycle? Well, because these people will come back to their hometowns, and then they will say it. They will repeat, we saw the Messiah. He already came in, the one we were waiting for. He is in Jerusalem. And then eventually they'll be like, okay, he died. And so on. And everybody will understand in the diaspora what was going on in Jerusalem. As today, we got the news, we got the internet, we got TV and all of that. But then it was just people, mouth-to-mouth kind of news. And just make sure there were no fake news. And so they were going on in a way, if it came from the Jewish people, it must be true, right? Well, not necessarily, but anyways, we're going to look on Pesach today. What do we celebrate on Pesach? First, we celebrate the deliverance of Israel from the slavery in ancient Egypt, and second, our spiritual deliverance from the slavery of sin. In other words, we're celebrating the glorious power of God manifested by his mighty hand while delivering his people. What are we? This is what are we. I always like to lay down what are we. It's a thing that I have. The way I learned the Bible, the way I learned the cycles and the calendars and times and the space and everything, is the way I laid it down all the time. So most of the holidays we're going to see here are in this slide. Of course, we are getting into Pesach and other holidays in between. The most important, all of them are important, but we count the Omer, and then we head into Shavuot. And before Sukkot, we're going to look into all of these dates that are important. Some of them are not celebrations, but commemorations. You get the 17th of Tammuz, the 3 weeks of sorrow or admonition, the 9th of Av, Shabbat Chasson, very important. Isaiah 7 weeks of consolation, very, very important period of time. We are getting into the month of Elul, and the very important holiday is Rosh Hashanah, Shabbat Shuvah, the 10 days of Av, Yom Kippur, and Sukkot. And then the other holidays that the rabbis put together for all of us, Hoshana Rabbah, Shemini Atzeret, and Simchat Torah. And then we'll close this scroll and we'll go back to the future all over again. Back to where the idea of having Messiah, God himself with all of us, walking with us, having dinner with us, teaching us, dancing with us. Can you imagine that period? It will be amazing. We have no idea now because our minds are so entertained with, sports, soap operas and politics and other things that are very minor in comparison with these things. We tend to solve the problems of the world by trying to get involved. I got to get involved in this situation, otherwise nothing will move, right? It's just remind me the movie. There's a movie, a cartoon movie. I went to see this show in a theater also in Broadway, New York, The Lion King. And you remember that little cow who's against the hyenas, right? The hyenas are like they're trying to get him, and he's like, meow, right? And they all were like, ha 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 ha. And suddenly he starts again. He's like, whoa, and they're all scattered, right? And he's like, wow, man, where is that coming from? Then he looked in the back and he realized that his father is behind. So that's what happened with us. Anytime you're trying to get involved in some kind of activity, either politics or anything else, you're not doing anything. I'm sorry, but you're not doing anything. You think you're doing something because someone told you, oh yeah, you got to get involved in this and that, and the world will, Yes, sometimes we got to do our part, but not doing it in a way that you think you're that lion. Yeshua, the Lion of Judah, is the one that does everything for us. That's very important for us to understand, to be humble. I don't care how tall, how big you are. I don't care how strong or young you are. You're not doing anything. I don't care how smart ladies are and all of that. You're not doing anything. How holy we can be as well. Even holiness and faithful, and the faith itself comes from the Lord. The apostles were like, oh man, help us to get more faith. Help us, give us quotes of faith. How we can understand that you are God. How? After Yeshua explained to them that he is God, they're all scattered. And he's like, are you going to leave us well? Are you going to leave us well? And Peter says, no, where are we going to go? You are the Messiah. You are our Redeemer. You are our God. He's the one behind us. We are nothing without him. Of course, with the other tenets, like the resurrection is very important. We are in the month of Nisan. Very important to understand the month of Nisan. And this is the head of the month. This is the new year for our spiritual life. That we tend not to celebrate as we celebrate Rosh Hashanah. We should be more happy than Rosh Hashanah, in my opinion. But hey, that's the way we're doing it, The Shalosh Regalim, again, we're going to see them 3 times a year. All your men are to appear in the presence of Adonai your God in the place which he will choose. At the festival of Matzah, at the festival of Shavuot, and at the festival of Sukkot. They are not to show up before Adonai empty-handed, but every man is to give what he can in accordance with the blessing Adonai your God has given you. So remember not to come up with, empty-handed. So we had 3 pilgrimages, the 3 pilgrim festivals, Pesach, Passover, Shavuot, and Sukkot. In Hebrew, they are referred to as Shalosh Regalim. Pesach, this festival ordinarily marked the early harvesting of the barley, commemorated by the special offering of the Omer, and on the second day. The term Pesach means to pass over and commemorates the release of the Jewish people from bondage in the land of Egypt. Pesach is observed for 8 days, 7 in Israel, commencing in the 15th of Nisan. The 4 days in the middle are referred to as Chol HaMoed, the weeks of the festival. Chol HaMoed is very important. Please, when you're doing this, follow the readings of the Bible. The readings of the Bible are very, very important to understand these mysterious kind of things. The rabbis put everything together. Stop trying to figure it out your own calendar. Don't do that. It's just, the Lord will put everything together one day. Don't try to figure out which goes by and so on. Forget about it. Just follow the calendar that is already in place by the Jewish people. Don't try to go all over the place trying to figure out other things. Hol HaMoed, very, very important days. And just follow the readings. The readings are really important. So Pesach, this festival, they got different names. One of the names is Pesach, of course, which means Passover. The other one is Hag HaMatzot, literally the festival of Matzot, unleavened bread. During Pesach, it is a mitzvah, a commandment to eat matzah. As the Torah states, 7 days you shall eat unleavened bread. Exodus 12:15. It's also called Zman Cheruteinu, literally time of our freedom. Egypt is referred to in the Torah as Mizraim, or place of narrowness. A place of narrowness is a wonderful symbolic image for the restrictiveness of slavery. Through the Pesach story, we travel from the narrowness of forced servitude to the openness of freedom. It's a very interesting, I need to read this very interesting commentary on matzah and Passover. Because in the next we have Ha'aviv, which literally means the festival of spring. In this commentary, it's really amazing. It says the watchwords of both the spring and Pesach are rebirth and hope. So as we see why this cycle of holidays they need to match the seasons of the year, at least in the north part of the hemisphere, because it reminds us the rebirth and hope. As you know, you're gonna start to find out the mighty pollen for some of us is horrible, but it's just amazing the way the flowers, the leaves, and everything starts to rebirth, and it's a hope kind of. It gives us the green kind of thing, give us hope, lots of hope. Passover reminds us annually that no matter how terrible our situation, we must not lose hope. Passover holds out the possibility of renewal, proclaiming that such change is an intrinsic to human nature as are blossoming trees to the natural world. And I was talking about Hamatzot. Another name for Pesach is Hag HaMatzot, the holiday of the unleavened bread. The matzah evokes images of that night when the Israelites ate the sacrificial lamb, and a fearful and eager anticipation of the future. Matzah, as a symbol of liberation, is meant to trigger in our minds the whole story, which began in slavery and ended in freedom. It is an act of redemption by God that establishes the covenant between Israel and God. Prior to the Exodus, the covenantal relationship existed only between God and individuals. Abraham, for example, Passover marks the beginning of the relationship between God and the Jews as a people. God's claim to the covenant lies in his having fulfilled his promise to bring us out of Egypt. This covenantal relationship lies at the heart of the celebration of Passover. We rejoice for the past liberation from Egypt and for other redemptions by God since then. And because of the fulfillment of past promises, we anticipate at Passover the future final redemption. We create a special role for the prophet Elijah at the Seder as the symbol of our faith in the redemption soon to come. But this is the part I like. I really love this part. Further, we refrain from chametz as part of the process of personal liberation. In rabbinic interpretation, chametz is seen as a symbolic of the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination. The removal of all chametz is a metaphor for an inner process of purging and freeing ourselves of impurity, the chametz that lies within us. This is why we go to such lengths to remove even the tiniest amount of material chametz. It is meant to signify the difficulty of the struggle to remove those negative parts in ourselves. So that inventory that we do in our lives is very, very important. I will say it's more important than all the little details of the preparations of the Pesach dinner. Philo, a Greek Jewish philosopher, described chametz as pride because leavened bread is puffed up. The remove chametz then is to struggle with our sense of self-importance. Philo's sense of chametz also fits well with an interpretation of the Exodus story as a struggle between Pharaoh, a man who thinks he is divine, and God, the being who is divine. Thus, it was necessary to bring about the plagues to humble Pharaoh and to teach him the answer to the question he so flippantly posed to Moses in their first encounter. Who is Lord? Who is the Lord that I should listen to his voice to let Israel go? I don't know. I do not know the Lord, and I will not let Israel go. So this, you see, can you feel the prideness of this guy? He's so pride, right? Exodus 5:2. The Exodus story teaches us that it is God and not humans, not even a king, who controls destiny. In searching for chametz, we search for the pieces of Pharaoh's arrogance that lie within each of us. See, most of the time, we tend to, when we read the book of Exodus, when we perform these holidays, we tend to believe that we are Israel, right? Oh, we are good people. We are the slaves, and so we are good people. What if we have some parts of Pharaoh in our lives? What if we start to repent instead of playing around and think that we are only the good people? You know, it's kind of a human thing. When we write history, for instance, we're only going to write the good things. We're going to report only the good things of our history. The American history is beautiful. It has more than 200 years. And, you know, the historians, they've been written everything. But lately, we find certainly things that are kind of spots in that history. Wait a minute. This president was doing this and that? I didn't know that. Was this guy drunk? Was this guy a womanizer? Was this guy... So, it is important for us to, and I'm just comparing the American history, but it can be the history of any country in the world, in the nation. It's just because we live here in this awesome country. But I'm trying to get the idea that we can also do the same thing in our lives. Stop being hypocritical and just find out what is going on. Do I have tiny pieces of Pharaoh in my heart that I need to get rid of? And the rabbis do it. They, you know, it's a symbolic of the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination. We all have evil inclination. I always say that we are, as human beings, we are, and pardon me, I'm trying to offend anybody who has those issues, those mental issues, but we are spiritually bipolar, okay? What it means is the godly us and the fleshy us. So we all have the same struggles every single day. Who's the one who's going to pop up? The one we've been feeding. Whatever you've been doing during the day, whatever you've been watching, listening, reading, is what you're feeding in your soul. It's getting your subconscious. It's getting those ideas into your mind and heart. And sometimes they are so deep inside our hearts that we have no idea that we got them in there. So this season is important for us to make those inventories and make sure that we're going to get rid of those things. I gotta move. Got to move. So, the Exodus narrative mirrors the journey of Ha'aviv. Almost the entire world is emerging from the restrictions of winter and opening up to the new life of a spring. So that hope occurs only in our Messiah. And on Shavuot, we have, Shavuot is the second of the three pilgrim festivals. It's celebrated for 2 days outside Israel and in Israel for 1 day. The name Shavuot means weeks, because it occurs 7 weeks after the second day of Pesach. It falls on the 6th day of Zivan. The Torah was given to the Jewish people on Shavuot. Again, this is amazing how some congregations, even rabbis, I would say, they call themselves rabbis or pastors, or those people who study the times and so on. They're trying to figure it out when exactly Shavuot. Just stick to the calendar. And it's right there. Don't go crazy with those things. And they even get, and let me tell you, any explanation of these procedures, of these studies or whatever, it makes sense. They make sense. However, that doesn't mean it's the truth. And so, but the most important thing, we're missing the most important thing, which is the details in our hearts. This festival marked the harvest of the wheat crop, the last grain harvest of the season, and the beginning of the fruit harvest. A major feature of the celebration was the ceremony of bringing the first fruits, or bikurim, of the harvest of the temple as an offering of thanks. The bikurim were carried in beautifully decorated baskets. Families will gather together to walk to Jerusalem, and they will sing, dance, and have music playing while they walk. When they arrive at the temple, they gave the bread and fruit to the priests and will bless them. Today, synagogues are decorated with greenery and flowers at Shavuot. Tradition has it that King David was born and died on Shavuot, and many students in Jewish schools have their graduation on Shavuot. The different names of Shavuot are Zeman Matan Toratenu, the time of giving of our Torah, Hag HaBikurim, the festival of the first fruits, Hag Hakat Zir, harvest festival, Hag Matan Torah, the festival of giving of the Torah. Those are cool names. All of them apply to this celebration of the HaBikurim. And this is the caravans that used to... Can you imagine these people moving and dancing and having just a festive walking, a festive, caravan? The nations will ask, what are you doing? What are you celebrating? We always ask. When we hear music and people dancing, hey, let me see what it is, right? What are you celebrating? Can we get into it? Can we, And that was a way to invite the nations to see and to walk into the same celebrations. And it's important that on Shavuot, Pentecost, was when the Holy Spirit empowered the disciples of the way of the Messiah, so they will be able to spread the good news around the world. That was so powerful that they did that. Of course, the giving of the Torah applies to those people as well. And that's how we met Yeshua. That's how we met. That power helped us to understand the Messiah. A lot of people says, "Oh, you gotta look the Bible with Jewish eyes." I will say you gotta look at the Bible with the Messiah's eyes. Because this is not about religion. This is not about religion. This is about the Messiah. And in this congregation, let me repeat this again. I think I said that before in another opportunity. We're not teaching you how to be Jewish or how to be a good Christian. We are teaching you how to be disciples of the Messiah. And that's what we need to learn, how to be disciples of the Messiah. So we need to see the whole Bible, from Genesis to Revelation, with the eyes of the Messiah. That's the most important thing. Then Sukkot. On Sukkot, originally a harvest festival, Sukkot was given added historical significance as the commemoration of the Exodus from Egypt. when the Jewish people had to live in temporary dwellings, whilst they lived in the desert before entering the promised land. The different names of Sukkot are Chag HaAsif, the festival of gathering. After our ancestors had gathered in the land of Canaan, they realized that Sukkot was celebrated in autumn, a time when they gather the crops from the fields and the fruits of the orchards had been gathered. These events were celebrated with great excitement. Sukkot is also referred to as Zaman Simchateinu, the time of our happiness. And then, of course, remember the 4 species. There are 4 kinds of plants known in the Hebrew as the Arba Minim, the 4 species or spices, whatever your accent or your ways to say it is. I say species, is that good? Okay. These are said to represent the unity of Israel amongst other things. They are avarot, willows that have neither fruit nor fragrance, the lulav, palm branch that has no fragrance but has fruit which can be eaten, etrog, the citron similar to a huge lemon that has a sweet fragrance and can be eaten, hadassim, myrtles that have pleasant fragrance but cannot be eaten. The 3 myrtle twigs and the 2 willows are tied together to the palm branch, and together the entire bouquet is called the lulav. The 4 species were intended to symbolize the final harvest and the fertility of the land. So let's go back to Pesach. Pesach always happens in the month of Nisan, or Aviv, the month of Aviv, as the Bible specifies is on Exodus 12. We have no time to read Exodus 12, but before that, before the festival of Pesach, we have 2 important portions of the Torah that are part of the special Shabbatot. I had another class specific for this holiday, but I couldn't put it together last week. I got it together in my head, but I haven't put it in paper and in the slides yet. But there is lots of very good remarks from the prophets right before Pesach that is important for us to read. Today's Shabbat Hagadol. It's important for us to read Shabbat Hagadol in a prophetic way. You know, we always wonder about prophecies. That's another thing that people do. This tendency of be very, so tied up with prophecies, right? Prophecies here and there, when it's going to happen, and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, it's going to happen, okay? Just be ready. But anyways, if you really are into prophecy, read the prophets, okay? Don't read the guys who interpret the prophecies. Read the prophets. And so the prophets, in their prophecies, in their books of prophecy, will let us know things. This is one of the things. Shabbat HaKodesh last week, and it was last week. Oh wow, I wasn't here last week. It was last week, Shabbat HaKodesh. Okay, and this week is Shabbat Hagadol. And the next week is going to be Pesach. Time goes really quick, right? Ladies, you got everything ready? You bought the matzah? I got matzah from last year if you want. It still tastes the same. Okay, so these are the things that we are looking into. Shabbat HaKodesh, on the Shabbat before Rosh Chodesh Nisan, we read Parsha HaKodesh. This month is for you, the first of the month. This reading is intended to remind us the Pesach is fast approaching. Very important to approach and see what's going on for the next following weeks. Then we have Shabbat HaKodesh. What is in Shabbat HaKodesh? It is the Shabbat that initiates the preparations for Pesach. It's important in some communities, they even read the Haggadah. They read the whole Haggadah, so by the time they go to the table for the Seder, they're all ready. I don't know if you want to read the Haggadah a week before. And it's, as you can see in the slide, there's a big bag in there. And what did you bag in that bag? In that baggage? Your ego. And it's a huge baggage of ego that we all got. You know, that's the biggest thing we got. Our egos need to be packed and done away with them. So, this is Shabbat HaKodesh. Let's read the verses. The Lord says to Moses and Aaron, in the land of Egypt, this month shall be for you the beginning of month. It shall be the first month of the year for you. The Haftarah for Shabbat HaKodesh is in the book of Ezekiel, chapter 45, as we see last week, which tells about the Rosh Chodesh Nisan sacrifices, which were brought and which will be again brought in the future when the third Beit HaMikdash is built, the third temple. The Haftarah concludes with these words. Why this is not working? Okay, it's worked now. The Haftarah concludes with these words of consolation, like the flock of Jerusalem at her appointed times, so shall the waste cities be filled with flocks of men. 36:38. Traditional Haftarah reading is in Ezekiel 45:16 to 46:18. The Nisan has three names. We already see that. We already saw that. Let's move to Shabbat HaGadol. The Great Shabbat is the Shabbat before Pesach, Passover. I couldn't get this volume down. Readings for the special Shabbat today, Exodus 12, 3-6, in Malachi 3, 4-24. This amazing Haftarah commemorates the 10th day of Nisan, when the Hebrew slaves took the lambs that they were going to offer for Pesach and tied them up outside their homes to keep until they offer it on the 14th. We can be here hours and hours comparing or paralleling this with the trial of Yeshua, the illegal trial of Yeshua, I will say, which, according to some people who study this a lot, they think that he was, at the same time that the Pesach lamb is being inspected, Yeshua is also inspected. It's very interesting to see that. The special Haftarah reading for Shabbat HaGadol is Malachi 3, 4-24, the prophecy of Elijah's returning before the great day of the Lord. I mean, the whole thing is paralleling really perfect. That's why it's important to read the portion Shabbat HaGadol today. Read it, study it, put it in your head and in your heart. It's very important. This messianic prophecy, reading regarding the end of days and the return of the prophet Elijah, is read at this time, because it is believed that Elijah will return at Pesach. This is why we include a cup for him in our Seder rituals. You need to do it. It might show up. Never know. So, in this picture from Rabbi Rosenberg that I always show up in this kind of teachings, talks about different things, but this is about the three solemn feasts, the Jewish calendar cycle, the three solemn feasts. The arrows will show you where we are as well. It's important to see the cycle of the Torah right there. The cycle of the Torah, the seasons, and the cycle of the festivals are all together. They all need to match up. Okay? So you see Passover, number 1, Shavuot, number 2, and then Sukkot. But before that, you need to move to 2 prophetic 7 weeks, 50 days period. The first 50-day period we're going to see now is this 7 weeks from Passover to Shavuot. Remember, on those 50 days, 40 days were dedicated to the sacrifice of Yeshua, his death and resurrection, and then 40 days with his disciples. I wonder what he was doing with his disciples, teaching them probably, the things that will happen and so on. And of course, they were studying the Torah, definitely. And then there's another 7 weeks period of time from 9th of Ab to Rosh Hashanah, but that's another story. So Pesach, I got a little lost here. Pesach is a very interesting holiday that we need to look. Preparing for Passover, Pesach traditions. For 7 days you are to eat bread made without yeast. On the first day, remove the yeast from your houses and so on. The first item in preparation of the Passover is to make the area where it is to be held, most often the home, free or leaven yeast. I mean, it's important to have congregational seders, yes, but it's nothing is better than to have it at home. I mean, at home, it's just, I prefer it at home. A small crowd, more time to talk, and so on. But the preparations are, the most important is remove the chametz. The Hebrew word for 7 days, for yeast is zeor. The Hebrew word for yeast is zeor, and bread baked with leaven is chametz. 7 days shall ye eat unleavened bread. Even the first day you should put away leaven out of your houses, for whosoever eat leavened bread from the first day until the 7th day, that soul shall be cut off from Israel. So avoiding chametz is probably one of the most important things of the holidays. And remember, compare the chametz with what's going on in your hearts, what's going on with the pharaoh, the little pharaoh that you might have in your hearts and you don't know of. And that's including anything that contains yeast. Now there are more and more products that contain yeast. So you need to read all the labels and make sure what's going on. Preparation begins with a general cleaning, culminating in the ceremonial search for the leaven called Bedikat Chametz. The cleaning of the chametz, I mean, there's many things we can do. There are not coincidences that right before Pesach, at least this year. We've been reading the portions, other portions that are important. Let me move on. This is so cleaning. There's nothing mysterious about cleaning, right? Now, Yeshua and the Holy Temple. Yeshua cleans his father's house, John 2 from 13-16. Let's read it. From the Complete Jewish Bible, it says, and this is another event of importance during this season, is when the written record of the apostolic scriptures describes Yeshua cleansing his father's house. So as we cleaning our house, Yeshua also cleaned his father's house. It was almost time for the festival of Pesach in Yehuda. So if you read your Bible, you'll find specific times and space when Yeshua was preaching. He was approaching these specific times, this cycle of festivals. So Yeshua went up to Jerusalem. In the temple grounds, he found those who were selling cattle, sheep, and pigeons, and others who were sitting at tables exchanging money. He made a whip from cords and drove them all out of the temple grounds, the sheep and cattle as well. He knocked over the money changers' tables, scattering their coins, and to the pigeon sellers he says, "Get these things out of here. How dare you turn my father's house into a market?" Were they doing this all the time? Yes, they were doing this all the time. But according to some studies, these people were getting into the space of the nations, of the Gentiles, or the Goyim. So that's why he threw them away. And also he was giving us a lesson. Let's move on. there are different traditions. The Ashkenazim and the Sephardim will do different things. There's another thing, it's called the fast of the firstborn. It's going to happen this year on Friday. So this fast of the firstborn is a tradition. It's only for the firstborn of each family. Some traditions may include the females as well, and some only the males. And the fast starts in the morning and not night before. So the fast of the firstborn and the Surge of Hamas are normally observed on the day before Pesach. The Seder should be prepared for as much as possible before Shabbat begins. Because time should not be taken away from Shabbat to prepare for Pesach. So you're going to have a very, very busy Friday. And if you're fasting, it's going to be even more fun. Some communities celebrate the day before Pesach is the fast of the firstborn. I told you, a minor fast for all firstborn males, commemorating the fact that the firstborn Jewish males in Egypt were not killed during the final plague. Okie dokie. The Pesach Seder, you know all the nice items that you put in there. You have to have the Pesach Seder plate and the Haggadah, the order of service. Haggadah means the order of service. Traditionally, we must consider ourselves being freed from Egypt. Again, Haggadah means the telling. Now, the most important item for this holiday is this. The matzah, I already can taste it. Can't wait, right? I'll put some jelly on though. Some avocado or something nice, you know. The most significant observance related to Pesach involves avoiding chametz, leaven. Now this matzah not necessarily needs to be squared or rectangles. It can be round. So don't feel bad if you cannot find, in certain areas of the United States or around the world, you won't find the square ones. It's nice that we got them in here because we put them in different places, very neat and so on. But if you find them round, it's okay as well. All right. That's the third plate. You know the items that it contains. Haroset, roasted lamb, shank bone, karpas, zeret, maror, and a roasted egg. Where that roasted egg comes from, I don't know. But it's there. Okay, so some people got issues with that. It reminds them the other egg from the other festival. But anyways, we won't discuss that today. So the third plate contains all of those. We have no time to go to all the details. Then you have to have the 4 cups of wine based on Exodus 6 from 7 to 7. If you have issues with wine, please do not drink wine. Because we don't want to have those issues in our homes, right? If you are, in other words, if you are an alcoholic, if you cannot handle alcohol, even in minor amounts, do not drink alcohol. That's it. You're not going to get struck by a lightning if you're not doing it. The 4 cups of wine based on Exodus 6 from 6 to 7. In the southern night, a special place is set for Elijah. A child will open the door for him as if Elijah is waiting to come up. A cup of the fruit of the vine is poured for him to drink. Very good. The Pesach Seder. The biblical text in Deuteronomy 6 from 20 to 23. You have to have the Haggadah, all the things for the things for the plate, and then the celebration goes to sanctification, washing vegetable, breaking the bread, the story, washing again, blessing over grain products, blessing over matzah, bitter herbs, the sandwich, the dinner, the afikomen, grace after meals, praises, closings, and then you go home. Don't drink too much, otherwise you'll be arrested if you have to drive. The importance of these celebrations for the believers in Messiah Yeshua and the Shalosh Regalim. All of these have to do with his birth, life, death, his death and his resurrection, ascension, his holy temple, his the living water, the ingathering, his second coming, his kingdom, the world to come, the final redemption, which is going to happen when he comes back as the King of Kings and Lord of Lords. The process and establishment of salvation is being by Yeshua HaMashiach. I mean, the most important thing that we need to concentrate right now is on his birth, life, death, his resurrection, and ascension. He is to the right hand to the Father. So don't forget that this is a whole package. Don't take just one thing. You know, some people just get caught up in his birth, when he was born, and then it's the whole thing. It's the whole package. He is the Passover. We are saved by his complete work. There are many verses that tell us. We don't have time to go all over again, but Romans 5:10, Romans 8:32 to 34, Hebrews 7:25, Hebrews 9:24. Now Romans 5:10 says, "For as we were reconciled with God through his Son's death, when we were enemies, how much more will we be delivered by his life now that we are reconciled?" I mean, his death is important, but it's more important that he's alive. This is a nice verse too. Romans 8:32-34. "He who did not spare his own son, but gave him up for us all, how shall he not also with him freely give us all things? Who shall bring a charge against God's elect? It is God who justifies. Who is the one who condemns? It is the Messiah who died," and then you can see the whole package in here, in this verse. "It is the Messiah who died, and moreover was raised," resurrection, "is now at the right hand of God." The third thing, he's at the right, his ascension. "And he also intercedes for all of us." So this is really cool. This verse, oh my God. This verse shall be one of our favorite verses. The whole package is right here. Hebrews 7:25, the Tree of Life version says, "Therefore, he is also able to save completely those who draw near to God through him, always living to make intercession for them." Hebrews 9:24 of the Complete Jewish Bible. He says, Amen. All right. "For the Messiah has entered a holiest place, which is not man-made and merely a copy of the true one, but into heaven itself, in order to appear now on our behalf in the very presence of God." So, what we do is that when we finish, is that the next year will be in Jerusalem. So, if you cannot go this year, maybe next year you'll go. If you cannot go physically, do it spiritually. Let's pray. Thank you, Father, for your amazing grace. Thank you for this cycle of freedom, revelation, and redemption. Help us to understand your word, but most important, help us to be doers of your word. B'Shem Yeshua HaMashiach. Amen.